Hey y'all, and welcome back to a new video. Today we're going to be looking at a chess game of round 7 of my most recent chess tournament. This is probably the only game that was actually bad of the tournament. This is the final round, and mostly the tournament's been going great. I beat someone over 500 points higher rated than me. I did a lot of good stuff, and at this point I'm up like 100 points on my rating, which is insane. But yeah, based on the title, based on the thumbnail, you kind of know what's going to happen. I am going to lose this game, but we still have to talk about the chess, so let's get into it. My opponent starts off the game with the move d4, and I play the move knight to f6, going for some type of just a normal setup. I'm putting my knight out, I'm stopping e4, I'm going for this. Maybe I'll play a Nimzo-Indian if my opponent plays into it, and my opponent does c4, e6, and knight to c3, and if I want here, I can play the move bishop to b4 and get into a Nimzo-Indian position, which is a position that I actually know decently. Like, I have some theory there, I know what I'm doing, but for some reason in this game, I decided, okay, if I play into the Nimzo-Indian, I could do this. This is Nimzo-Indian. My opponent can play a lot of things. For example, my opponent can play queen c2. We can get it to a very interesting game. I play d5. I know the theory here. But then I just decided for some reason for this game, I honestly don't really know why I did this. I decided, okay, I don't really want to play the Nimzo-Indian because I don't really know, because I guess I was worried that I had like forgotten all my theory and that I was just going to get a bad position. And to be fair, honestly, I have been getting pretty bad positions in the Nimzo recently, so it's not like the most unwarranted thing ever, but at the same time, it's really stupid to decide to play something else when you're already set on playing a Nimzo. Whatever, I play the move pawn to d5. This is another opening that I know. Queen's Gambit declined. Very simple position. My opponent can go for something like this, and we can get into an interesting game. My opponent does, in fact, go for c takes d5. This is one of the lines. Let's go past some of the easy moves. E takes d5, bishop to g5. I play the move pawn to c6, solidifying my pawn since my opponent is threatening to take, and after queen takes, take this. And if I take with the pawn, I would have a weakened pawn structure, so c6 is on the board. Pawn to e3, I decide to play the bishop to e7, simply to develop the bishop, break the pin, and maybe I can play a move like pawn to h6, get my knight out somehow, and we can play a game of chess. My opponent goes bishop to d3, and here I'm already kind of on my own, because I didn't really understand the position in its entirety. My opponent here is kind of just having an easier game than I am, and my pieces are struggling to develop. Like, I have this bishop here, I have this knight here, both of which I don't really have the easiest space to put a home on. If I put my knight on d7, I thought that I was blocking my light squared bishop, which I am. And I do know that in some positions you do this, you do block the bishop. But for some reason during this game, I just decided I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to block my bishop. I'm going to play this like I'm just going to try and get my bishop out first, and then I'm going to get out my knight. So I play the move bishop to g4, which is technically a book move, but I would honestly say that it's an inaccuracy because it's putting the bishop on a square that doesn't really need to be on. The bishop should not be out in this position. The bishop really should not be out in this position. The bishop should be defending the b7 pawn. If the bishop wants to be anywhere, the bishop should be on f5, but of course the bishop can't go to f5, so the bishop should be staying on the c8 square, and I should be developing my knight to d7, then to f8, and then to e6. Or to g6 really, and just play a pretty normal thing, probably to e6, and just play a pretty normal thing. But instead bishop to g4 on the board, attacking the queen, and basically my idea was, okay, he might play knight f3, this would justify my plan, I'd be happy here, I play a move like knight bd7, life is good. If he plays knight ge2, which he played in the game, I don't really know what I'll do, I'll figure it out. I don't think the e2 square is really where the knight wants to be in this line, so this kind of makes sense. And I'm going here and I'm stopping the move pawn to h3 from happening in advance to stop me from going there. This is why I went there first, because if I didn't go there first, if I played something else, then he might play pawn to h3 and just stop me. So okay, bishop to g4 is not the worst move in the world, but it is kind of the beginning of problems for the black position. Anyway, my opponent goes knight ge2. Reasonable. Taking this knight is stupid. I don't want to give a bishop for no good reason. And I decided to think for a good long while about the position. The obvious move here is simply to play the move knight b to d7. I didn't play this move. This move makes a lot of sense. This is the top engine move too. The point is I'm getting my knight out. This was kind of the whole idea. I put my bishop out first and then I get my knight out. But for some reason, again, I did something stupid. Instead of putting the knight on d7, from knight to d7, I was looking at the structure. And I was like, you know what? This looks a lot like a certain other position that I used to play with the black side. This looks like a Caro-Kann. This looks a decent amount like a Caro-Kann. And in the Caro-Kann, there's an idea here where this bishop goes to h5, then to g6, trades off for the light squared bishop, and then we play chess from there. Again, that's not really correct, because in the Caro-Kann also, my opponent has a pawn on e4. Well, would have a pawn on e4, or would trade this off and would have some other type of structure. And, well, normally in the Caro-Kann, in like a position like this, he wouldn't have a pawn on e3 and I wouldn't have a pawn on c6. And that would be like kind of the trade-off, and we'd be playing like for the e5 square. That's what normally happens at the Caro-Kann, and that's why we put the bishop here, because it trades off my opponent's bishop. I get this positioned quickly, and my opponent's pawn is a little weak on the d4 square. But in this variation, in the simple Queen's Gambit decline type setup that we have here, this pawn is not a weakness. My opponent is not going for the e5 square, so I don't really have the same motifs in this position, and I might be playing for c5 eventually, which is another idea in the Caro-Kann, but it's not really here. So really, I shouldn't have like thought this position was a Caro-Kann. I should have just played knight bd7. Instead, I went for the idea with bishop to h5, which again is okay, but it's not what I should be doing in the position. My opponent thinks for a while and simply castles his king. Reasonable move. Technically gets an inaccuracy. The computer wanted him to be a little bit more active with some moves like queen b3 or h4, kind of crazy. Not really a human move, h4. But you know, if my opponent was an engine, he'd find that move. Instead, he does the normal thing in castles. I put the bishop on g6, fulfilling the prophecy of the bishop's, of where the bishop is going, and I'm looking to see, okay, if he takes this, I'm doing well because I get the open h file, and we play a game of chess here, and maybe I'll win, maybe I'll lose. Really, whoever wins, it'll be fine. I don't really mind too much. Instead, my opponent goes f3, and he plays for the center. And here is kind of where I start getting a little bit nervous about the position, because f3, e4 is not that easy to stop. My opponent has some very, very easy play. My opponent can, first of all, right now, he might be threatening to take the knight here and play this move pawn to e4, taking control of the center, and actually, I'm not too happy about my position. Maybe I'm okay. I'm not too sure. Like, for example, if I castle here, I thought maybe this could be an idea. Just e4 immediately. Okay, here it doesn't work because of the pawn on d4, I guess. But, I mean, eventually maybe he has this. And I just wasn't having any of it. I was kind of getting nervous. I didn't like my position. I was trying to maybe get something going, and I simply played the move knight bg7 after a little bit of think, because, well, it's a move I have to play. I have to bring this knight out eventually. Now seems like a pretty decent time, and I didn't really believe in e4 at the time. I thought maybe my opponent would weaken the d4 pawn, like what happened in the game. Sorry, not what happened in the game, like what I just showed you. And, yeah, it'd be a problem for him. Okay, my opponent believes me too. He plays queen to d2. Reasonable move. He's getting his queen up on the square. He's connecting the rooks. It seems like a logical move. Seems like something that he wants to do. Yeah, he's also just moving the queen out of the way for any weird advancements on the light square. So this is always just reasonable, always a reasonable thing to do. But actually, it started giving me very, very interesting ideas. I thought that maybe there was a need to play knight to e4 at some point. And the point is that I'm hitting the queen, he's hitting my queen. I'm hitting the queen, he's hitting my bishop, and I'm attacking the bishop too. I'm sacrificing a whole knight, and for example, if my opponent takes, I'm going to take the bishop, and maybe I'll be okay. However, now it does not work. so I simply castle my king. But this is kind of brewing in my mind, and you'll see that this happens very, very shortly afterwards. My opponent goes rook a8e1, and I calculate a line, which is very, very flawed. I calculate the move knight to e4. And this is what I played after like 10 minutes of thought. But it's wrong. It doesn't work. The point is, what I had calculated was knight to e4. My opponent can do a lot of things. First of all, I calculated what happens after bishop takes e7. My opponent, I would take his queen, he would take my queen, I would take his rook, he would bring the bishop out to h5, I would take the bishop here, and I would be just comfortably better. Okay, because I'm up in exchange. He takes mine piece, I'd be up a piece. Alright, cool, so we can't do that. Of course, we have to calculate what happens after f takes e5, which was what f takes e4, which was what I was looking at in the game. After f takes e4, bishop takes g5, f d5. I calculated c takes d5, knight takes d5. I believe it was something. I believe, yes, it was bishop takes here, I think. Queen takes here. And somehow, like, white is just better. No. Sorry. I calculated knight e4, f e4, takes, knight takes, and I think it was the move knight to e5. And here, black was doing better, because if black takes, then I take the knight on d5. I'm attacking the bishop, which is pinned to the king. My opponent has to has to go back to the square. Then I'm going to then I think I take the bishop, queen takes, and then I take the pawn on a2. And I thought that in that position, black would be doing okay. Black would be doing fine. Because we are equal pawns, so my opponent would have some weaknesses in the center, have this isolated pawn on b2, and my pawn structure would look a lot better than his. Okay, reasonable, right? So that's why I ended up playing the move knight to e4. Unfortunately, in that line, I miscalculated, and I missed that after f takes e4, bishop takes g5, e takes d5, c takes d5. This has all happened in the game. My opponent does not have to take on d5 immediately. My opponent can play bishop takes g6. And this is what I missed. This is just what I missed. And after this line, I'm just down a pawn. Because I don't have knight e5 anymore. After takes, I don't have knight e5. Yeah. That's sometimes what happens. It's very, very unfortunate. What I had to do here, if I wanted to actually play the game more, the reason why it's like only plus 0.3 instead of a full plus 1, which is what a pawn loss would be, is because if I play the move knight to f6, dc, bc, and I don't even know, something like bishop to c4, black actually has really good play on these light squares here. I'm kind of blockading his pawns, and I have pretty easy ways to improve my position. Moves like queen d6, bringing my rooks in the center, and these pawns are pretty flimsy. Unfortunately, I didn't realize my mistake. Well, I realized my mistake after after he took on e4. I think I realized it like here. See, I spent a minute on this move. Yeah, if I just steeled my nerves and played the move like knight f6 and tried to like realize, okay, I'm going down a pawn, we should be doing the best we can, maybe I would have had a better time in this position. But in any case, that's not what happened. Bishop takes g6, h takes g6, and knight takes d5, and I am simply down in a pawn in the position, and I am trying to survive. Of course, the game is not over. I'm down a lot on time. I'm down a pawn in the position. It is only plus 0.5, and I still have to play the best moves. I'm not going to resign just yet because I'm only down a pawn, right? Like I can play this. I've lost games where I was up a pawn before, so my opponent can also lose games where he's up a pawn. Okay, let's try to have him do that. I play the move knight to b6 after a good bit of thought. The point is that after knight to b6, I'm getting rid of his active knight. I'm going to try and get my rooks into the center, and hopefully down the line I'm going to be able to put pressure on his pawns over there, maybe put pressure on the queen side with my queen on b6, and try to go for something over there. Also, by the way, after knight takes b6, I wasn't sure here whether I should take with the a pawn or the queen. I ended up deciding on the queen because I realized that my rook isn't actually that powerful in the file. I'm glad that I managed to do that properly. My opponent goes knight to c3. I'm going to try and go a little bit faster the rest of the game because I try, but it doesn't really work out too well. Rook f2 e8. My opponent has this nice idea of queen to f2, getting out of this pin of the bishop, which was honestly one of the only things I had in the position. And here is really my last chance in the position. I should be playing this move f5 here. And the real reason for this is that I stopped the move pawn to e4, because after e4, f takes e4, and for example, well, rook takes e4 is the better move, but knight takes e4 seems a lot more natural. I'm gaining my rook on the f file here. I'm going to be putting pressure here for something like queen e2. Then I can play queen takes d4. I win my pawn back, and I'm actually doing okay. And if rook takes e4, I still put my rook on the f file, and we just play a game. But actually, black is having decent play here. For example, you can't take with the queen because of the pawn on b2. Take like this, I get my other rook to the f file probably, and we play chess. We play chess. Yeah, but I don't do that. I end up thinking for a while and play queen to e6, defending my pawn on f7, sorry. Pawn to e4, and I'm panicking now because I see a future where my opponent's pawn's just race down the board. I go rook to e7. Maybe I can move my queen out of the way. Maybe I can do something here. This is actually a mistake because it kind of walks into like knight d5 ideas. Now I can't put my queen on b6 and a6. It doesn't really do much. Rook e2. Interesting move. If I'm being completely honest, I don't really know what this move does. Maybe he's trying to move his rook out this way in some lines. Maybe rook d8. My opponent goes pawn to d5. Technically a mistake, but it's fine. It makes a lot of sense. He's opening up this diagonal. If I wanted to keep playing, I could have played the move queen to d6. I need to stop this move pawn to e5, but at this point, I was already very, very depressed. I was like, okay, I'm losing the game. There's not much I can do. And I simply play the move queen to a6, defending my pawn on a7, trying to go for counterplay, but now my opponent goes e5, and the pawns march down the board. Rook d to e8, my opponent goes knight to e4, immediately threatening some ideas over here, while also the bishop. I end up playing the move bishop to h6 after some thought. Bishop h4 did cross my mind, but I thought my opponent just plays g3. The point is he can't take because of the rook. This is actually completely okay because my opponent can go knight to g5, queen h5, take, and rook. Sorry, not this. What does he do? Queen f4, and this pawn is weak. And he still has these very, very nice pawns. If I take this, I'm just getting mated here with the simple puzzle rush mate here and rook to f8 checkmate. So I can't do that. I didn't really see that during the game, but I just thought he played g3, and I was like, oh, all my bishop is just trapped. It's not, because of bishop f6, and really this is kind of unforgivable. I should have seen this move, but in reality, in some lines here, even fg7, and I'm still losing. Like, I'm still losing. Can't go here because of this. King h7, this is a check. This is a double check, really, so I would lose the game. Yeah, it's a little unfortunate, so I played bishop h6. Maybe I could have played on bishop h4. It doesn't really matter. My opponent goes pawn to d6. I take on e5, and here my opponent simply delivers the ending touch of the game. Queen to f7, I play king h7. One final mistake. It doesn't really matter here. He's playing d7 anyway. Rook g8. There's not d8 queen. Takes, and then d8 queen. I saw that, so I didn't want to go there, and I thought that I was just losing anyway. But I played king to h7. My opponent goes knight to f6 check. I can't take because of the pin, and I simply resign the game, as there is not much else for me to do. I'm just getting mated, really. Yeah, and this game was a little bit sad. If you can't tell, this game was not not the best game I've ever played. I definitely played a lot worse than I had played other games in this tournament. Um, and yeah, it's unfortunate. I have another tournament though, so maybe I can redeem myself. I have a tournament in DFW, I think, next weekend. Maybe I can redeem myself there. There's going to be more videos. I'm not going to just quit making videos just because the tournament is over. I'm going to try and go for more like daily uploads again, maybe twice daily uploads like I've been doing recently. And we're going to try not to take any more like super long breaks like what happened earlier this month. Anyway, that's all I've got for you today. Hope you guys enjoyed. Hope you guys found this entertaining, instructive, all of the above. If you did, remember to like, subscribe, do all the normal things YouTubers tell you to do. I gotta work on my articulation. And yeah, good evening and good night.